in nature, what does it do? And in nature, the purpose of sex is reproduction. And when you have gay sex, you can't reproduce. Therefore, it goes against the purpose of sex.
What I will say is there's two sides to this argument. There is the philosophical side, and then there's the practical side, or the factual side. And unfortunately, your argument fails on both sides. So if there is something that is not natural, I don't think that matters. I don't think that determines whether or not it is moral or not.
Yeah, I think, yeah. Thank you for speaking to me, because it's actually been really helpful. I think you sort of brought me over a bit on this.
Well, I'm really glad to hear it. That definitely makes me really happy to hear. And so, Ben, you commented in my chat and said that I don't understand consent and I'm helping the groomers. Want to explain that one to me?
Yeah, so I've heard you talk about it in loads of your videos, how you think that it's is important to teach kids about consent in schools, and that you should teach them to be gay in schools and stuff like that.
Yeah, I never said that kids should be taught to be gay. I said that it's okay for kids to have a general understanding that gay people exist, they're real, and there's nothing really wrong with it.
But wouldn't that encourage them to be more gay, though?
No. What it would do is, if somebody was gay, if a kid was gay, then they would probably be more likely to be honest and open about being gay, because they've been raised that there's nothing wrong with it, because there is nothing wrong with it.
But there is something wrong with it, though.
Okay, so what's wrong with it then?
It's not the the natural state of humanity. Look at Thomas Aquinas and natural law. To find out what the purpose of something is, you need to look at in nature, what does it do? And in nature, the purpose of sex is reproduction. And when you have gay sex, you can't reproduce. Therefore, it goes against the purpose of sex.
Okay, so first and foremost, I don't really know how accurate that is. I don't know if we need to be or if there's something necessarily wrong with going against your natural state. I think that humans wearing clothing and pooping on a toilet is probably not natural either. So I don't think that would be immoral, however. What I will say is there's two sides to this argument. There is the philosophical side, and then there's the practical side, or the factual side. And unfortunately, your argument fails on both sides. So if there is something that is not natural, I don't think that matters. I don't think that determines whether or not it is moral or not. Just like I said, it's not natural for humans to use cell phones, go to the bathroom on the toilet, wear clothing, wear glasses, drive cars. So much of what we do as humans is specifically deviates specifically from our quote unquote natural state. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, factually, there is actually another reason in nature for sex, and that is strengthening bonds. And that's what we actually see in nature in regards to homosexuality. There are entire, I don't want to say communities, that's not the right word, but there are entire areas where you can see, or entire species where the dominant leader of the chimps or the apes or something are, they're lesbian. So you see lesbian relationships in nature. We can see homosexual and bisexual relationships in nature as well. Many times for the purpose of strengthening bonds. So there is actually a natural reason for it.
But do those animals stay with the other animals for the rest of their lives, though, and live in relationships?
Most animals don't really stay in relationships. Well, that's not true. I don't want to say that. Some animals stay in relationships, but there's some animals that don't. And being in a committed relationship is far more unnatural than it is natural.
But you do agree, for humans, it's important to be in a committed relationship, though, right?
It's important to be what?
In a committed relationship for humans.
Yeah, sure. I think that's probably going to be most beneficial. But yeah, your argument was that it's not natural, which is why it's wrong. But that's not true. So
thing for humans is to be, in a committed relationship.
Okay, so why can't two gay guys be in a committed relationship?
because it's not really what like God intended for us.
Okay, but do you see how you're jumping around here? Because you started off by telling me that it wasn't natural. Now we realize philosophically it doesn't matter if it's not natural, and factually it is natural. Now you're saying God doesn't like it. It sounds like you don't really have a very strong reason here.
Well, can I talk about the consent stuff?
Can we talk about this for like 5 more minutes first? Because I'm not trying to give you too much of a hard time. It's just
sorry. I think So sorry, I feel like I haven't really explained myself well enough. Sorry. So what I sort of think is like I'm a Catholic, and I think that God created nature, and he like gave everything in nature a purpose. I mean, have you heard like the sort of argument that comes from Aristotle about like things having purpose, like the telos?
Yeah, you kind of already said that it's based on like the natural purpose, right?
So like for example, like in humans, like our teeth are so like perfectly formed to do like what the teeth are meant to do, which is like ripping into meat, or some of them are designed for like chewing things and things like that. Like it shows that like God's given everything a purpose. Like everything must have a purpose, because otherwise it wouldn't make sense for them.
Sure, but then the question would be that is deviating from that purpose always a sin? So like what you just said, teeth, the purpose is to chew things. Well, what if I use my teeth to open up my soda can? What if I use my teeth to like bite my nails? Am I sinning against God because that's not its purpose?
Well, I don't think it's very good to bite your nails, and if you like open a soda can, it might damage your teeth.
Well, people use their teeth to like open stuff if there's like a wrapper they can't open or whatever. So like, is that a sin? Even if it's not good for you, is it a sin?
But then you're thinking about like the effect on society though, with something like homosexuality though.
So we seem to be in a little bit of a weird limbo here. So you're saying that there's a natural state for things, and your argument is because there is a natural way to be, by being gay, you're going against that natural thing, and that means that it's immoral or wrong or whatever. But it's not unnatural. So I feel like your argument kind of falls apart right there.
Oh yeah, I sort of see what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah, I can send you this if you want to check it out. It's
that would be good. I mean, yeah, I'm just sort of thinking from like my perspective, because I haven't like really seen any like homosexual relationships I've like worked out long term. It just seems like they're always like jumping about from person to person. And
yeah, but you realize this.
Can, like,
sorry, I'm sorry, I cut you off. Please go.
Sorry, I don't really see like. I just don't think that's like a good environment to be like raising kids in. And then, so like if it had enough of an positive effect on society, then it'd be like fine if it like went against God's purpose. But combined with the fact that it goes against God's purpose, and I don't see how it has like an overall like positive effect on society, or even like a net neutral effect, I don't understand why it should be like being encouraged in schools, or saying that it's like equivalent in schools.
Right. Okay. I mean, the problem with that argument though is that like, have you ever seen the divorce rate for straight couples? Haven't you heard the stat? 70% of marriages end in divorce. Like,
I haven't heard that one though.
Okay.
Is that true?
It is true. Yes, divorce among straight couples is astronomically high. That's actually one of the arguments used commonly by like the red pill Andrew Tate types, who will talk about how marriage is a bad idea because, it's not going to last, this, that, and the other thing. So
is that though?
Hello, everybody. It is Present Hunter here. Just wanted to drop in really quickly and correct a mistake I made just there. It's not that 70% of marriages end in divorce. It's actually that close to 50% of marriages end in divorce, and 70% of divorces are initiated by women. Those are the actual statistics. I made a little mistake and said that 70% of marriages end in divorce. My mistake, my bad. Hope you can look past it and enjoy the rest of this video. Thanks.
Sorry, is that in Western countries, or is that in sort
of... Yeah, I believe that would probably be in America, where that stat was from.
Okay, well, like surely then you could make the argument that as society has become like more liberalized, that's led to a and things like homosexuality have become more accepted, then that's led to like an increase in the divorce rate.
No, it wouldn't be the increase of homosexuality. It would be the changing of laws that allowed for women to initiate divorces. So I don't necessarily think divorce is intrinsically bad. I think that if a woman is in a relationship with a man who's beating her or raping her, and she previously wasn't able to leave because of the way the law worked, and now she has the ability to divorce that man, I think that in that case, it's actually really good. But that's sort of straying from the point because, so one, homosexuality is actually natural. Two, you said it
Yeah.
doesn't really benefit society much. It actually does immensely. So, because gay people cannot naturally reproduce, they are far more likely to adopt. So, gay people bring a huge positive to our society in regards to the fact that they adopt at higher rates. And then, even more so, gay couples are more likely to adopt hard to place children who are kids who are older, they might be disabled. Once you hit the age of 8 years old in the foster care system, your chance of getting adopted plummets. I mean, there's a good chance you will live the rest of your childhood in the foster care system, which is horrible for your well-being. So gay people do actually bring a benefit, even in that case.
But like when you're a child, like your parents are like the model for how you should grow up, and I don't know if we should be like, I don't know, I don't know if that's a very good model. Like, surely we'd want children to sort of like survive and like reproduce.
I mean, maybe, but like in a way, gay people they might not be like biologically reproducing, but they're still raising children. They're still having families. And it sounds like
Yeah,
this is a huge misunderstanding of how sexuality is. Like, y- I'm not straight because I was raised by parents who were straight. I'm straight because that's
but
my sexuality, and there's literally a genetic factor playing a role there. So
wait,
it's
there's
not
a
like
genetic. Wait, wait. I didn't. Sorry, is there a genetic factor?
for your sexuality.
I thought, but when have they found the gay gene though? Like, I felt like that would have been all over the news.
Yeah, because they didn't find like the single gay gene. Instead, they found that there were various different genes that sort of work together to not really predict homosexuality, but it was a consistent among homosexual couples. So, yeah, there is actually a genetic predisposition for gay people to be gay. And there's obviously a genetic basis for the fact that I'm straight or you're straight. This is why no matter how much you might try, I don't think you could ever convince yourself you're actually gay. I know I couldn't because I'm not gay. And this is why gay people have been put through conversion therapy over the decades, where they are literally forced to look at like, it's torturous pretty much, where they're forced to look at straight pornography, and there's all kinds of electroshock therapy where they try to basically force them to be straight, and it's never worked. So like there's more to it than just a choice. It's that there are people who are actually like genetically born this way, or at least born more likely to be that way. So it
Could,
just seems like
could
there's not
you
really a strong reason to
you
be
like
against gay people.
could you like link me a study or something?
Sure.
Because I like honestly I hadn't like seen anything like that.
Sure. Yeah. No
Um,
problem.
I,
I'll send that
I
over to you right now.
but yeah. Sorry, I'm happy to sort of concede that point then
Okay. Yeah. I mean,
because
I think that that's fair. Do you mind if I ask how old you are? You sound kind of young. No offense. Not trying to
um
be rude.
yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah. I'm 16. Yeah.
Okay. So I got a 16. I don't know. Maybe I probably wouldn't call you like a homophobe. That might be a little bit mean, but I don't know.
No, I sorry. Sorry. No, I'm not. Sorry, I'm not like. Yeah, I've nothing wrong with like people just like being homosexual in their like
Right. No, I
day to
understand. I
day
understand.
lives. Yeah, and I'd like, yeah, I've nothing against like gay people, but I'm just not really sure about it like being talked about as like equivalent to heterosexuality in like schools and stuff.
Okay.
But yeah, but if they're like if you send me this and like that actually is like and it's not really like social in the way I thought it was, then I'd be happy to concede that.
Okay, based. I mean, yeah, that's cool. Whenever I'm talking to people who are a little bit younger, I try to be like a little bit nicer because not like that sounds again belittling. I'm not trying to come across belittling, but like
Yeah.
I try to be just a little bit more understanding because I remember being 16 also. And I remember being really strong in some of my political positions that I look back at now and I'm like, oh my God, I was so wrong. So I kind of just remember what it was like. So, it's not here to like name call or throw a bunch of accusations.
Yeah.
I'm trying to
Awesome.
find
Like,
this study for you right now. But
yeah.
then if we want to move over to because you also wanted to talk about consent and you said it sort of helps
Yeah.
the groomers. How do you feel? How do you explain that?
Like when you're like grooming somebody, like the quite like common thing. I mean, I've watched a couple of your streams and before, um, and you'd like talk about how like when somebody grooms somebody, it's they get them comfortable with like the idea of sex. But surely if you're like teaching like 10-year-olds in school like about sex, and like surely that's like getting them comfortable with the idea of sex.
Um. Okay, so grooming wouldn't just be like getting somebody comfortable with the idea of sex. Grooming would be getting a child or a person who is where there's like a unhealthy power dynamic where you're sort of manipulating them to not be just comfortable with sex, but comfortable to have sex with you. So the grooming would be more like the teacher is slowly introducing their students to more and more explicit imagery in hopes of getting them to engage sexually with her. That would be grooming specifically. When you say like getting more comfortable with sex, I don't really know what that means exactly. Like, I think that by the time you're 10, 11, 12, you probably should have an understanding of what sex is, why it exists. And I think that having a general understanding there doesn't make it so that you're like, oh, I want to go have sex, but rather you're not left to your own devices to like go look up Google or some other, unhealthy means of discovering this. I think that if you're taught this in a, again, mature and healthy way, not like, go try it, Johnny, but rather like, this is what sex is, this is what it means, etc., etc. I think that's probably a beneficial thing. People should have an understanding of that.
I like I don't think, but as far as I'm aware, I've like been doing some research on this. I don't think there's like many like studies that have actually shown like, even if you think, oh, they're going to reduce like teen pregnancy and abortion, if you like to look at that, right? I don't think there's actually been many studies that have like actually shown that it does.
Oh, there
And
have
like
been. I'll
furthermore,
get one of those up for you too.
fur- like furthermore, like I think like a parent knows better like about like the individual needs of the child, like what the child knows, than like some sort of civil servant. I don't know what you call like the equivalent in the US, that like knows what a child needs in terms of education. And like a school like curriculum about education sort of ignores the individual differences between like children, and it sort of takes like a one size fits all method to something that is like a really sort of personal and individual thing. And I think that, I don't know, I just feel like I don't like really need like the long arm of the states like getting involved in something as like personal as like sexual relationships. I don't know.
Right. So I think that there's two sides to this. I think that in some ways you're actually correct. And I know people listening are probably like, wait, what? But I think that in some ways you're correct in the sense that the parent is probably going to know best with how to help their child specifically if they're having a problem understanding something or going through an issue. I think that the parents are probably going to be better, again, in an ideal world, to reach their child in a way that's more unique to that individual child. But I think that a teacher is going to be more equipped to just lay out the basic facts in a way that's informative without being inappropriate. So I think that the parents can be very present in helping their child understand this unique to that individual kid. But I think that there's also something to be said about like just being given the facts. This is what happens. This is what sex is, etc., etc. I think from a teacher, that's probably better because you also have to remember that we're not in an ideal society. So parents are sometimes really poorly equipped to have these types of conversations with their kids.
Hmm. But like there's like more to like a sex and like a sexual relationship than just like learning about like plumbing and birth control pills. And I feel like this type of sex education you get in school is like, oh, how to do it and how not to get caught. Like rather than giving the like messages of like, I don't know, like love and respect, and the fact that it should be contained within like a committed relationship or like a marriage.
Well, because that's something that you might not want taught. That's something that would maybe be more specific to the unique individual of the family. So like that's where I would have a problem is I don't know if it's good for the teacher to be like, this should only be done in a committed relationship. Um, I don't know. I don't think that that's necessary either. I think that here's the facts. This is what sex is. You probably don't need to. You probably just need to do that. You probably don't need to be like give a moral opinion with it, because then I feel like you're falling into more of an abstinence only sex education where it's like this is what sex is, but don't you dare ever even think about sex unless you're married. Which is actually correlated with more teen pregnancy. So there's a lot of problems there. Now, of course, the bare minimum is that when you teach sex ed as far as like general anatomy of an individual, that's beneficial even for younger children. Again, I'm not saying you sit down with young kids and tell them about sex, but if you sat some young kids down and just explained like anatomy, basically, even that is important because it actually reduces child sexual abuse, because now that kid knows what's happening to them. They know that like certain parts of their body are not supposed to be being touched by some stranger or something. So that actually helps kids avoid child abuse. And then if you're talking about older people, 8 or I guess 9, 10, 11, that kind of range, actually being taught just about sex in general, that's correlated with way lower teen pregnancy. I have 2 different studies here up on my screen. I don't want to talk for too long
Sorry,
here.
I don't. Sorry, like I might just be like coming at this from like a weird perspective because I go to like a sort of a British like Catholic private school, but like I don't well sorry, no, it was a C of E private school, I think, but like I don't I don't think I've like had the same thing said in like sex ed, so what like might be taught in America, because they like school private schools in the UK have like loads of freedom to basically teach whatever they want, and I don't think I've like been taught the same things.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
obviously, I'm going to agree
um,
that there's a way to teach these subjects that would obviously be inappropriate, but the goal would be to avoid the parents who are probably more likely to teach this in a way that's inappropriate, rather make it so that there is a set standard. Here is how these subjects are meant to be taught. You shouldn't deviate from this. That way, kids, once they're around the age of 9, 10, and 11, etc., are given a healthy understanding of what sex is, but in a way that's very factual without any sort of moral implication. Because
yeah,
I don't know what your school teaches. I don't know if it teaches like abstinence only type stuff, but like that's really common for a long time. The just don't have sex, just don't have sex. And that just doesn't work. That literally makes
so
it a higher risk of teen pregnancy, actually.
so like just from like my perspective, like my school like didn't teach like, and I think we were like one of the first years to have like what you'd probably call sex ed, which like we were one of the first years to not have the like abstinence only stuff.
Mm-hmm.
When we were because like the first time I had this was year 5, which I think is like maybe 4th grade for you. I can't remember which way around it is, but sort of like 10 year olds.
Mm-hmm.
And we 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 had like the headmaster come in, and he's like told us, like he basically explained, oh yeah, boys and girls have like different parts, and at some point you might have a relationship, and at some point you're probably going to have like wet dreams and things like that. And he
Mm-hmm.
like started going into like really like weird stories about sorry about how like, and I just feel like if it's like too open for like some of the like weird views of teachers, because I don't think like all teachers perfect, and I just feel like they might inject too many like harmful views into it, because
Right.
like the way that like they talked about it, it just like made it seem like really scary almost, like, and it just like a couple of kids in my class, and like it just felt like really sort of traumatic, I suppose. Like the way, like it just felt like it was like all piled on us like really quickly, and
Right.
something that like at an age where like the idea of sex is still a bit like icky, to like be learning all this stuff like almost
Right.
like puts you off it, which I don't know if that's like helpful to society as a whole.
Right. And I do agree. Well, okay. A couple things is, first of all, I agree completely that there's a way to teach these subjects in a way that's inappropriate. And the story you told me, if you're saying you're 5 years old and you start learning about like wet dreams and stuff, that is fucking weird, in my opinion. Like, I would be against that
Sorry,
completely.
9 years old. Sorry, like year five. It's called like this
Oh,
great.
year
It's like
five, but you were 9 years old.
yeah,
Okay. Okay. Okay.
yeah,
Gotcha. Still, like, that might be something again that I don't know. I think that your concern is completely valid, but I also feel like that concern would be even greater if we're talking about the parents. Because you're right, the teachers aren't perfect, but the goal would be that this teacher is held to a certain standard where they are required by law to teach these subjects in a specific way, which ideally would be free from bias, no moral implications, just giving the facts, basically. But parents don't have any of that. It's more likely that a parent would teach sex in a way that's traumatic or in a way that's just bizarre. I mean, there are some kids who aren't even ever taught about sex. Their parents just don't want to even talk about it with them. And it's like you reach a point where you're like, what's going on with my body? What is this? Like, why am I not learning about this shit? And it reaches a point where it's almost like you're being deprived from important knowledge, just of what it means to be like human, of living your life in the world. So I think that there's more risks with the parents, but I do, like I said, I'm sympathetic towards your position.
yeah,
But if there were
yeah.
teachers who are held to specific standards, which is the goal here for America anyway, um, held to certain standards that they have to teach it this way, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. And I'll just go over this really
Yeah.
quickly. Not so I don't want to talk too long here, but it says, um, so here's one study from Science Direct. Teaching about contraception was not associated with increased risk of adolescent sexual activity, or STD. Adolescents who received comprehensive sex education had a lower risk of pregnancy than adolescents who received abstinence only or no sex education. That's one. There's another one here that says, the state with the highest teen pregnancy rate is Arkansas, and Arkansas is also one of the states that does not mandate sex education because it's really Republican over there.
Okay, yeah. I mean, yeah, I think, yes, I do see your point there. I think like my view's been shaped a bit by the, yeah, because yeah, I sort of like agree with you. I think because I feel like my view's sort of been shaped by the fact like the teacher had like a bit too much control over what they said, and like they tried to rush it in. And maybe if we had like a more standardized thing, then that would like actually be better. Yeah.
Right. And that's the thing is like
Yeah.
there's it's easy to fall into that mindset also where it's like it was bad how it was done, so you start to just think it's bad entirely. But like obviously if I'm riding in my car with my dad and he backs into the wall, then I'm not going to say cars are bad because of my own personal experience because well, cars don't have to be backed into walls. They can also be very beneficial, right? So same thing
Yeah.
with the teacher. Like you probably didn't like the way the teacher went about it. It made you uncomfortable. You felt like it was way too much too fast. All fair critiques for sure. But that doesn't mean that like sex ed has to be that way. It's possible for you to reap the benefits of comprehensive sex education and avoid those creepy, weird aspects.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like now that you've explained it to me, like my point almost seems like counterintuitive because surely if it was more standardized, then that experience wouldn't happen. So yeah,
Right. And
I
also
do
it's sort of counterintuitive too when you think about like
yeah,
abstinence only. Cause I was taught very
yeah,
abstinence only as well. Like, this is don't do this until marriage, no sex, sex is bad, avoid sex kind of thing. And not only does that associate with sex with like these feelings of shame and guilt, which is actually incredibly detrimental for healthy sexual relationships if you are in a long-term committed marriage or something. So that's actually detrimental down the line. But yeah, the abstinence only just leads to a higher rate of teen pregnancy. And it's not that surprising because you've never been taught how to engage in sex in a way that's more healthy without taking a risk of pregnancy. Instead, it's just been sex bad, sex bad, sex bad. So, of course, if you're not going to listen, you're also more likely to fuck up because you haven't even been taught anything other than just don't do this. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah. Sorry, I'm just I did send you like a message on Instagram from my Instagram account, so you can just sort of ignore that now because now I've spoken to you.
Okay.
But yeah, yeah, I do sort of get your points, and yeah, I'd be really interested in reading some of the studies you've mentioned because yeah, I don't. Yeah, I feel like my views sort of been very much shaped by like my anecdotal experience, and like obviously that's not a thing, and yeah, yeah,
Right.
I've just seen that come through. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
All right. Well, I
I'd
sent
love
you
to
over some
sort
studies here.
yeah,
I
I'd love
sent
to sort
you.
of yeah, you've got like the Aidan Ross thing today, so yeah, I'd love to talk to you at another point after I've like read the studies, but sort of yeah, thank you for that.
Sure thing. Yeah, I sent you 3 different ones about the gay gene and then just 2 on the abstinence only stuff. And yeah, don't feel bad for having your own opinions shaped by your own experiences. Like that's how most people obviously form their initial opinions on stuff. It's also not really even necessarily a problem in like your day-to-day personal life necessarily. It could be. But it's usually a problem when then you extrapolate from that onto the rest of something. So as long as you're like aware of that, there's nothing wrong with having an anecdotal experience. It's really just make sure you're being conscious of your experience doesn't actually speak for everybody. And sometimes the statistics on something can actually go against your own personal experience, which doesn't mean your experience is invalid. It just means that it's very unlikely your experience speaks for everybody.
Yeah, I think yeah. Thank you for speaking to me because it's actually been like really helpful. I think you sort of brought me over a bit on this
Well, I'm
because
really glad to
like
hear it. That definitely makes me really happy to hear. And yeah, look into it. And glad to have you here on the call.
thank you. Bye.
See ya. All right. That was cool. That one much better than I was hoping. I like that guy was open to sort of changing his mind also. That was pretty encouraging. It was wholesome.